Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another reading vlog. This is a little bit different than what I usually do because it's gonna be a journey for me. It's gonna be a journey of self-discovery. Basically, I am a part of a horror book group on Facebook, and someone posted 12 graphics that each had a subgenre of horror and a bunch of recommended books that fit that genre. And I was interested because I've never really thought too hard about the subgenres in horror before. Like, usually if a book is titled as a horror, I pick it up and I read it. It's a bit of testing myself to see if I can actually do a long-term reading vlog, but also to see what is my favorite horror subgenre. So we are going to go through the subgenres and the book I've chosen to read for that subgenre, and then I'll keep updating you as we go along with my reading process. So the first subgenre was haunted houses. I've got a couple of options. The first one we've got is the September house. I don't know anything about this. We have got episode 13, which I'm sure is about like a ghost hunting TV show that goes to a house but really needs to make it impactful for the last episode. And the last book for this category I've got is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. I'm pretty sure this follows a girl going back to the family home where her dad murdered a bunch of people. So this probably is going to be my most likely option. I may end up reading all three, but that is haunted houses. The second category is demon/possession. For this one I have chosen to read The Haunting of Alejandra. I've actually ordered this from Australia's version of Thrift Books, so that is on its way to me right now. Next category is witches, and for this I have chosen to read the ever popular Slewfoot by Brom, the same horror book group that I found these graphics in. Like, everyone talks about Slewfoot and how good it is, and like how it's a bit slow at the start but it picks up, and there's illustrations halfway through. And I don't know if this is going to be my vibe because this is like a 1660s like witch trial, I think, kind of book, and that is not my vibe, but it's fine. I'm going to give it a go. I actually purchased this specifically for this video, so I better bloody read it and I hopefully will enjoy it. Next category is a category that I generally don't like when I'm watching horror movies, and that is a creature feature. I hate creature features in movie format, especially because they usually reveal the creature in full at some point towards the end, and I'm like, well, you've just ruined the elusiveness of this creature. Unless it's really grotesque, in which case it can be kind of cool, but generally speaking I will not watch a movie if I hear it's a creature feature. But for this category I have actually got 3 books also. So the first one we have is Monstrilio, which is about a woman whose son dies. She keeps a piece of his lung and feeds this piece of his lung, and it becomes its own being and grows, I guess, into a little monster. I have no idea. I have also got The Troop by Nick Cutter, which I have been wanting to read for so long. I've heard nothing but praise for how disgusting, gory, and just too much this book is. Like, this book has pushed a lot of people to the edge of like, can I handle reading this? And that is exactly what I'm here for when it comes to horror books. So I am going to probably read this regardless of this vlog. Like, it's gonna happen eventually. And the last book I have for this category is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This book I've owned for quite a while and I've heard such good things, but it is never a book that I'm going to gravitate towards. So if there was one last chance for this book to be read before I unhaul it, this video is probably that chance. So again, we shall see. Okay, the next subgenre that we are going to explore is cults, which I think is probably going to be a winner for me. I love cult stories, documentaries, books, TV shows. Cults to me are so fascinating because, you know, every person says that would never happen to me, but like, it happens to a lot of people. Like, a lot of people that you would never think would end up in a cult sometimes do, so it could happen to you. It's fascinating to me. So the only book I've shown you so far that I've purchased for this video has been Slewfoot and The Haunting of Alejandra, which I already said. A lot of these books I already owned and I've just never picked up. This next book is the exact same situation. I've owned this book for a while, but the cover is so off-putting that I've never picked it up, and it is Geek Love. Look. I don't know what is happening on this cover. I know the very general idea of that this is about a family that travels with carnival, and I don't know if it's like a normal carnival or like a legit freak show. I have no idea. But it has made it onto a lot of lists for like most disturbing books ever. So I've got I've got my hopes set high for this one. Despite the ugly cover, I have heard a lot of people refer to it as disturbing and like almost too much for them. Again, I'm here for this. I don't know how a cult book is also going to somehow be like disgusting, but we shall see. The next category is cosmic horror. For this one, I have got Head Like a Hole. This cover to me is stunning, and I'm not entirely sure what this is about because I actually don't know what cosmic horror is. I will break down each genre in more detail as I actually read books in that genre, but I just know that this book is set in the 90s, like heavy 90s motif, and that the cover is beautiful. The next category we have is folk horror. I don't think I'm going to enjoy folk horror because, again, referring to movies, I don't like folksy horror movies like The Ritual. I didn't enjoy. There was a Paranormal Activity that was set at like a farm that kind of kept to themselves, which I would say was quite folksy. I didn't really like that either. It's just not like a setting or a atmosphere that I particularly enjoy, so I am apprehensive for this one. But I did purchase a book for this, and it is Pine. This one, again, I bought from the website World of Books, so it will be here eventually. No idea what it's about, but it was the only one I could find on that website for a relatively cheap price, and I didn't want to spend too much on a folk horror book because I don't think I'm gonna like that. Anyway, next we have got, this is a strange category. It's supernatural. For this one, I have again purchased from World of Books and Nothing But Black and Teeth. This book has had some very, very mixed reviews, but you know what? I'm just gonna roll with it. I think it's such a short book that some of the reviews that say that it wasn't amazing, maybe it's just because it's a short book. I'm just gonna give it a go. I know that it follows ghosties maybe surrounding a wedding, like everyone's staying at a house in preparation for a wedding and ghosties scare everyone. I don't know, I think that's the genre, but then I feel like supernatural is such a vague subtitle. Next I have got slashers. Slashers could potentially be my absolute favorite horror genre for movies and for books as well. So for this one, I haven't purchased any physical books, but I've got two choices that I'm interested in for this one, and I have currently got them both on Kindle and Audible. So we've got Only Psychos here. I don't know much about this. Probably about a bunch of people who are psycho and kill people. And the other one we have is Laws of the Sky. I've wanted to read this for so long, and this is a bunch of, I think, children go on a camping trip, possibly with their school, and it's a slasher, and I've heard amazing things about it, so I feel like if I do enjoy this book, I am going to purchase it because I've wanted to for so long. Anyway, next we have got gothic horror. So I have two books for this one that I already owned. We have got Our Wives Under the Sea. I am obsessed with this cover. I've mentioned it before on my channel how much I love this cover. And I didn't know this would come into gothic horror. This I thought was going to be more of a like Black Mirror vibe. It's not, apparently. Apparently it's gothic, and I don't know what classifies it as gothic, but basically we're following two women and their marriage after one of them comes back from a deep sea mission that failed epically. That's all I really know about it, but it's supposed to be haunting, and maybe the atmosphere is what makes it gothic. And an obvious choice for this category that I picked is Mexican Gothic. I've owned this book since it came out. I have never gone to pick it up, and yeah, I will see what happens, because I've heard that it can be very slow for a horror, which I would expect from a gothic, but I guess we'll see. For extreme horror, which again, this I feel like could cover many different categories, but for this one I have picked to read The Black Farm because it is on Scribd / Everand, whatever they're calling themselves now. It is on Scribd, the ebook. And then I have got our last category, which is Fever Dream, and for this I have purchased a book which is Follow Me to the Ground. It is an an ugly cover compared to the OG cover, but I have wanted to read it for a while, so I just like bit the bullet, bought it. But I am also considering finding some way of obtaining Jawbone, because that's another book that I've wanted to read for quite a while. This is a really long intro to a reading vlog. This is going to be a very long reading vlog. It's going to be 12 books. And I am going to go into more description for each subgenre if I can. Like, I'll do a little bit of research. But that is where I'm going to leave things, because I am about to go to my friend's house to watch Saltburn, which is popping off right now. By the time you see this video, Saltburn, like, the craze will be over, but I'm about to go watch it. So I'm going to go get ready. And I'll talk to you guys whenever I pick a book to start, and we'll get into it. Okay, so guys, the first subgenre I have decided to start with is the slasher category, because I am definitely a slasher sort of queen. I love slasher movies. So I'm going to chuck the graphic up here, and we're going to just go into a brief overview or summary of what the slasher genre entails. So the first point that I found is that generally in slashers the killer is masked, so like Ghostface, Michael Myers, Freddy, Jason, usually masked. Next is that they tend to stalk, harass and murder groups of people, usually with a bladed weapon. Bladed weapons is said like scalpels, knives, chainsaws, sickles, that sort of thing. And then we have got, I guess, the biggest trope with slashers is the idea of the final girl, basically the last woman standing, usually like the virginal character, and I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with the last thing I'm going to talk about for this trope, which is the black character dies first, which is pretty, I mean, it's been proven time and time again. So that's just an overview of the slasher trope as a whole. So based on this graphic, I have actually read 4 of the 9 books recommended. So I've read My Heart is a Chainsaw, which I think fits most of those tropes perfectly. Camp Slaughter and fits most of those tropes really well. The Summer I Died, I don't really remember that much because I didn't particularly enjoy it. And then Tastes Like Candy. Yeah, again, it fits with most of the tropes, maybe not so much that one because there are a lot of other elements to play, but I have actually read those 4. So my options for this category were between Only Psychos and The Laws of the Skies. Is it The Laws of the Skies or The Law of the Skies? No, The Laws of the Skies. So I actually started reading this book last night and I'm about 70% of the way through it. It is a super short book. I think the audiobook's like 4.5 hours long. So it's very short. I am thoroughly enjoying it. Like, the audiobook narrator, he's just got this voice, like it kind of reminds me like a Winnie the Pooh kind of voice, like a narrator from Winnie the Pooh, just such a smooth, great voice. It is a French book, I believe, and it is translated, so I usually have issues with translated books. I haven't had any issues with this one. Like, the translation seems to flow very smoothly, but based on everything I just told you guys about slashers, I don't think this book qualifies as a slasher, and that's the only thing that's making me really sad about this book. Basically, we're following a group of primary school kids that go on a camping trip for 3 days in the woods with their teacher and 2 of the mums as chaperones. All the kids, I think, are under the age of 7, so they're like babies. They're really little kids. And yeah, I'm not gonna get into spoilers right now because I haven't finished the book, but 70% of the way through, and like, it does not hit any of these tropes. So I'm just gonna, without spoiling too much, right? The killer so far isn't masked. They are stalking and harassing, but they're not murdering groups of people, and they're not using a bladed weapon. It might be a final girl trope, haven't gotten that far yet. There was no black character, so that's irrelevant about who died first. But yeah, like, it doesn't really seem like a slasher, and I can't explain why until I go into the spoilery section. But as much as I'm enjoying it, I think I'm going to have to also read Only Psychos for this challenge, because I don't think The Laws of the Skies actually fits the trope. So I'm going to hopefully finish that today and then maybe explain more of the spoilers and why it doesn't fit into this particular trope. But yeah, it's been an interesting start. So hopefully next time you see me, my hair will not look as dry and gross as it does right now. But I will catch you guys soon. Okay, my friends, I ended up finishing The Laws of the Skies and I ended up giving it a 3 stars. I had some issues with it apart from the ending, which we'll get into momentarily. I must emphasize, this was barely a slasher. This follows, like I said previously, a bunch of kids going camping and things happen. Some of them die or they all get killed off regardless, and that is all I'm going to say for the non-spoilery section because it's such a short book, but I was very disappointed by the ending. So, spoilery section coming up right now. The killer in this book is one of the children. He's, I guess, crazy. He's been an abused child and he's full of anger and hatred, and he ends up killing the teacher with a massive rock, like slamming it into his head. And obviously the rest of the children scatter. And at this point I was thinking, he isn't using a bladed weapon, he's not wearing a mask, you know, he barely has a motive other than he's just a child full of hatred. And by the end he kills, his body count is 3 by the end of the book. The rest of the kids, basically they kill themselves off, which was frustrating because this was in the slasher category, not like the extreme horror category. But yeah, the main kid, the evil kid, he kills 3 people, 2 of them with a blade, but 1 of them isn't. There was no final girl because no one survived, and it was so disappointing because the title of the book comes from a story that is told within the book, and I liked that story and I liked the meaning and the symbolism maybe behind it, but it was such a disappointing book that literally no one survived, and it felt like we were just killing characters off for the sake of killing characters off without any reason. So don't know if it counts as a slasher. 3 stars. I have also started reading Only Psychos, and this book, it has more promise. I'm almost finished. Like, it again is another short book. We follow a bunch of strangers in a snowstorm that have kind of like fled either the city or wherever they're traveling to and just stopped on a side of the highway, shitty little hotel. And you know, obviously the owner is really suspect, and the killings have just started at like the 65% mark, so it took a lot of time to get to this point in the novel. This particular killer hasn't used a blade yet either. This killer is not masked technically, but I will let it slide in this situation. And I don't know if there's going to be a final girl, and I don't think any of the characters have been described as black, so that trope, again, completely irrelevant here. I will give you an update once I finish this book. I'm thinking it's probably going to be another 3-star just because it's the kind of horror that is like, it's gratuitous, like you're just making it gross for gross sake, and you know, those kinds of books are never really going to be more than like a 3.5 star for me. So I'm actually going to the movies tonight by myself. The movie starts at 12:15, like 15 minutes past midnight. It is Night Swim, the new Blumhouse movie, so it should be interesting. So hopefully in the next clip I will give you an update on Only Psychos, and we'll also have the next category sorted out. Okay, my friends, I did finish reading Only Psychos, 2.5 stars. I was disappointed. No one survived in the end except like the perpetrator. A lot of the weapons used went blades, like there was a crowbar, brutal force, a gun. The killer wasn't masked. Again, no characters were described as black, which I'm noticing is becoming a real problem. And by the end it just felt gratuitous, like every death was different, but reading them they all felt the same. So unfortunately this category has been a complete miss for me. Well, my favourite from the books that were already on the graphic that I had read, like Camp Slaughter, was phenomenal. It was just such a fun book, but I guess the slasher category just isn't for me. Like, it just isn't, like, it's, I guess, a really good movie type for me, maybe just not a really good book type. Maybe it's hard to write a really good slasher. So I'm going to move on to the next category, which I have already started. Okay, my friends, next we are going to be reading books from the haunted houses category. So before we get into anything, let's go through some of the tropes that appear in haunted house movies predominantly. So first thing first is the family stays in the house, and I don't know if this means it is a family in the haunted house or despite it being a haunted house the family decides to stay, but I'll take either. Next we have the inclusion of possessed dolls. I guess Annabelle and The Conjuring sort of go hand in hand, so that one kind of makes sense to me. Next we have the house is set in the woods, like not in suburbia, it's an isolated house further away from neighbors. We also have the lack of an explanation by the end, so it's just kind of explained away as, well, paranormal. Then we have also got the possessed person is saved by the end. I'm going to amend this. I don't necessarily think it's the possessed person. I think it is the person being targeted the most is saved by the end. Then we have got the obvious idea that the ghosts are the villains in haunted house stories, and that there is generally a really slow build up to the climax. So let's get started with the haunted house books and see if these tropes ring true. Okay, my friends, I finished my first book from the haunted house category, which was episode 13. It did take me about a week to get this one finished, which is kind of a long time. And I think I'm going to go into a bit of an explanation about why that is. So let's just go through the plot first. We are following 5 paranormal investigators that have a ghost hunting show together. And for the final episode, they decide to investigate this specific house where a bunch of researchers went missing in the 70s. And they're trying to figure out where they went, what happened to them, and what were they trying to research. And I gave this a 3-star initially. I think it's closer to a 4, so I'll give it a 3.5. I enjoyed this book, but it just took a really long time to get to where we were going. Like, the first 65% could have been condensed into 100 pages instead of 200 pages. It was just a little bit long, a little bit draggy. There are a couple of other things I had issues with, but they are all going to come up as we talk about the tropes of haunted house books. So let's get into the tropes. Did we hit all of them? So the first one was the family stays in the house. I would say yes, we did. While they're not a family in a technical sense, they are a group of co-workers that have been through some shit together. And despite the things that happened even at the very start, they always came back and decided to stay in the house itself. We didn't have a possessed doll. We did have a doll that was moved by something paranormal. The house was set in the woods. It wasn't like it didn't have neighbors. I'm pretty sure it was set in the woods, if not the woods, like further away from other houses and residential areas. We've got that the possessed / targeted person is saved by the end. This one, it didn't really hit because I would say that the group is collectively being attacked by these ghosts. I don't think there was one person who was attacked more than the others. So I'm going to give it a cross for that one. Next we have got ghosts are the villain trope. This actually subverted that. That's the expectation you go into it having, and then by the end you don't really think that the ghosts are the villains. So that one it didn't hit, but it definitely hit the last two, which was the slow build up, which this was my problem with this book. It was such a slow burn. And the last little trope is a lack of an explanation, which again, I feel like the explanation for what was happening in this book was so wishy-washy, like, oh, because science and the universe and magic. And I hated having that explanation. But all of things considered, I did enjoy this book. Like, it's told in emails, texts, transcripts from video footage, and the last chapter blew my mind. Like, I didn't understand or comprehend what was happening. I had to go to Reddit to figure out what the last chapter meant, and when I actually understood what was happening, it blew my mind because it was so cruel. It was the cruelest way to end this book. Either way, like, I enjoyed it. I would recommend it. I just think it was a bit too slow for me to give it a higher rating. Maybe a 4. I'm gonna keep this book, and hopefully I will get started on my next one tonight, which is going to be Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. And again, once I'm finished this book, I will give you updates and tell you what tropes we did or didn't hit, and if I enjoyed this book. Okay, friends, I have finished Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. I have thoughts, I have feelings. Most of them are positive. So this book follows our main character Vera, whose mother is dying. So she goes back to her family home where her mother Daphne is bedbound, like really, really sick. And as the book progresses, we find out some things about Vera's childhood and her father, and there's always weird noises and strange things happening in this house. And it was interesting. So we're just going to go through quickly the tropes for the haunted house genre and see if we hit any of them in this book. So the first one was the family stays in the house, which is true. Like, Vera and Daphne were both in the house despite all the things that were happening and despite the history that occurs within the house. There was no possessed dolls. It was set maybe not in the woods, but it was set like away from a lot of other like residential houses. The possessed person is saved by the end. I wouldn't say that's necessarily true for this book, and I'll get into why. We have got a slow build up. This was a very slow burn sort of book. I mean, I really enjoyed it, but it was a slow burn. We've got ghosts are the villains, not true in this book, and a lack of explanation, which again is not true in this book. So it really didn't hit that many of the haunted house tropes that I've previously gone through. I'm going to get into a little bit of a spoilery section here to explain why those things weren't met specifically. So in this book we have got Vera clearing out the house in preparation for her mother's death, and we find out that in her childhood her father Francis was actually a serial killer. He killed men to cleanse them, and Vera grew up and kind of figured out what he was doing and could watch him commit these murders, and she was unintentionally the reason her father got arrested and sent to prison and is known as a serial killer. The tropes that missed specifically is because the house wasn't haunted. There weren't ghosts possessing the house. Like, so, you know, there wasn't really a target. Like, there wasn't a ghost targeting a person because there wasn't a ghost. And there was an explanation by the end. It turns out the entity that is haunting the house is actually the house itself. Like, the house has, I guess, a spirit, a soul that can become a physical creature. And this is the creature that's making the noises and weird things are happening. But this creature is also not evil. This creature is, like I said, like the spirit, the essence of the house, who cared for all its occupants and took on all their anger and their rage, and like took on the evil nature of all these murders, and kind of just wants to be left, like wants to protect the family and wants to be left alone. Like, stop destroying this house. People keep coming in and taking the house apart, and the house just wants that to not happen. So I thought it was kind of interesting, but the fact of the matter is this isn't a haunted house book because the house isn't haunted. The house is a thing. So I really liked it. Like, it was a bit of a slow burn, but I really enjoyed the storytelling. And I would recommend it. I just think it is definitely not as zippy as the chapters were in episode 13, but I enjoyed it. It's going to stay on my shelves, and hopefully today I will also get started on the September House, which is the last book I was planning on reading for the haunted house category. I may update you as we go along this book, or I may just give you updates at the very end, but I hope to see you guys soon. My dudes, this book, straight up banger. I finished this book ages ago. I've just been taking a break from this video for a couple of weeks, but this book, so bloody good. Okay, so this book follows our main character Margaret. She and her husband Hal have purchased this new house in the first chapter, and they're explaining it's beautiful, it's a big house, it's perfect for them. And then the second chapter, we find out, first sentence is, the walls are bleeding again. So this book goes straight into it. This house every September is full of paranormal activity. This isn't a spoiler. There is blood. I mean, the walls are bleeding. There's blood dripping down the walls. All these different ghostly presences come out. There is something in the basement, and he's very active in September's and tries to leave the basement, but that cannot happen because he's dangerous and angry and violent. And there's moaning noises and screaming throughout the night. And we find out that Margaret's husband Hal left the house, and that's it. So her daughter Catherine calls to say, I haven't spoken to Dad in weeks. Where is he? Margaret says, I don't know. And Catherine says, I'm coming to see you. And Margaret obviously freaks out. She does not want her daughter to feel or witness or see any of this paranormal stuff that's going on, because she doesn't want her daughter to bear the weight of it the way she has. Like, Margaret loves this house. She will do whatever it takes to keep this house, but every September really is the struggle, like the biggest of struggles. There's a lot of references to what happened the previous September. There's a bit of a mystery trying to figure out what's happened to Hal, but overall this book just goes so quickly into the haunted house nature. It's not a really slow build up to what's actually happening in this house. It's pretty obvious because you get told what's happening straight away. So I love this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think it is so much more than just a haunted house book, but we'll get into that. Let's go through the little tropes and see what this book hit. So the family stays in the house. Yes. Margaret's whole thing is she's not leaving this house for anything. Doesn't matter what happens. It is her house. She's going to stay there. The possessed doll trope never came up in this book. House in the Woods, this was set isolated from like suburbia, so I'd give that a yes. There's not really a lack of explanation. We do get quite a clear explanation as to why most of these things are happening, especially in September. The possessed person is saved by the end. Kind of true. Slow build up, no. Like I said, this build up, there was no build up. It was straight into the action, and it was really, really well done. And lastly, the ghosts are the villains. Again, it did not hit this trope. In this book, this is going to be very spoilery. There are a lot of spirits that are not, they're not malicious in nature. There's one who's just a housekeeper, and her biggest thing is making sure Margaret's okay, asking, would you like me to make you some tea? She is lovely. And a lot of the other ghosts are annoying. They pop up and they give her a fright here and there, but they are not intending to scare her. They don't mean to hurt her. They are just trapped in this house and they don't know what else to do. Most of them are actually children. So it didn't really hit all the tropes, but I'd say out of all the books I read for this category, this is definitely the most of the haunted house trope. Out of the 3 books I read for the haunted house trope, this I think hits the mark the most. It didn't hit all the typical tropes within it, but it really was just a great haunted house book. I know some people haven't liked this, especially because of some of the trigger warnings that come up, but they obviously didn't affect me because I absolutely adored this book. So I am so glad I got the hardcover. It's staying in my life forever, which leads us on to the next subgenre. We're diving into cults, guys. So here is the little graphic for cults. I only decided to read one book from this subgenre because I already owned the book, and it is Geek Love by Catherine Dunn. Now, I have already started this, and this book specifically is the reason that this challenge has come to a grinding halt. Okay, first let's get into the, I guess, tropes I'm looking for to determine whether or not this fits the cult category. Now, when you search cult book or cult film tropes, it'll come up with like cult classics, you know? So it's coming up with all these movies like Pulp Fiction and the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which are cult classics, but aren't necessarily movies about cults. And that's what I was looking for. So what I've done instead is just search on Google what defines a cult and see if that'll clarify some things throughout the book. So here are some things that make cults exactly what they are. So the first one is the cult leaders have extreme atypical beliefs. They are generally isolated from society. They are led by one charismatic leader who orders the other members based on their sets of beliefs. And the members primarily have a desire for community and will want that community over the bad things happening in the cult. Okay, there are 4 types of cults. There are doomsday cults, political cults, religious cults, and sex cults. So keeping all those tropes in mind, I am, like I said, reading Geek Love, and right now I think it kind of half fits the category, half doesn't. I am 118 pages into this book. The main character in this book, her name is Olympia. She is an albino dwarf. Don't know if those terms are still politically correct. I'm just going off of what is written in this book, and this book was published, I believe, in the 80s? 1983, so it's quite an old one for this list. This book follows our main character Olympia, and it starts off with her basically following how she is stalking her daughter. She gave her daughter up for adoption when she was younger, and she's been following her daughter, and her daughter's interacting with her but doesn't know that she's talking to Olympia, her mother. Then we go back in time to find out more about Olympia's childhood, and we find out that she was raised in a family of, for lack of a better term, freaks. Her dad and her mum run a freak show. They experimented with all of the mother's pregnancies to create children that would be fit for a freak show. Like the mum took drugs and they did different experiments on her to harm the fetuses in hopes that they would come out with some sort of deformity or some sort of gift, some talent that makes them different than the average person. Olympia is an albino dwarf. There's a range of other siblings, so we've got some conjoined twins. Arturo is, I guess, like a fish boy. He doesn't have limbs, he has fins. There is Chick. I love Chick. I'm so scared about Chick. But this family of, like I said, for the lack of a better term, people that are in a freak show, and that's what their family does. They travel around with their freak show carnival, and that's how the parents want to live their lives, and that's what they've created and their children for. And like I said, I'm 118 pages in, and I'm a little bit bored, which I I hear how that doesn't make sense. This book does sound interesting, right? I mean, American Horror Story Freak Show was one of my favorite seasons. I think it's just that this book is so long and that everything is told in such descriptive detail that it's just taking forever to get through it. Like I said, 118 pages in, so over a quarter of the way through, and we are still stuck in Olympia's childhood. We've gone from just before Chick is born until just after Chick is born in that time. I love Chick, he's my favorite of the siblings, but it's just very, very slow. I really do want to try and read a little bit more of it tonight. We'll see how we go. This book really has put me in a slump for this challenge. I don't know if you guys care to know this, but I started this challenge for myself on the 1st of January this year. It is now the 27th of February, and I have been stuck on this single book for over 2 weeks now, so it's really slowed things down for me. So I have been reading some other things in the meantime just so I stay reading and keeping productive, but I guess if there's any updates on Geek Love, I will tell you guys. But at this point in time, I'm so close to DNFing it. If it wasn't the only cult book on this list that I had some sort of previous interest in, I would have DNF'd it, but I just want to get through it for the sake of this challenge, just to show myself that I can. But I'll give you any updates. Okay, my pals, it is the 9th of March. Okay, it is 38 degrees in Melbourne today, and I finally finished Geek Love by Catherine Dunn. I'm annoyed at myself for not DNFing this book. I'm annoyed at this book for kind of giving me a little bit of hope in the last third of the book and ending it as shittily as it was ended. So I explained before, a family of people that are just formed, have some sort of disorder or are conjoined or whatever they have a carnival that their parents run, and I thought starting this book that the cult aspect was going to be the family itself. You know, they have workers and employees, but the family itself seemed very cult-like. They have these deformities that bind them as a group. They don't go out into normal society. They're not, some of their beliefs are a bit old school, I suppose, and I really thought that the family itself was going to be the cult. Lo and behold, at the 50% mark, I understood that there was an actual cult in this book that wasn't just the family. So whether or not the family is meant to be mirrored in the actual cult that is formed, who's to know? Basically, one of the brothers in this book, so one of the siblings at the carnival, has this grander than thou, holier than thou view of himself amongst his family, and he starts a religious cult. So as far as all of the things go, all the little tropes that I thought would pop up in this book, we get them all. Like, yes, this cult was isolated from society. They followed one charismatic leader. They followed his beliefs. They did extreme things because of his beliefs. Just amputation, FYI, in case you're thinking of reading this. And that was all mildly interesting. I was kind of invested when Arturo starts his cult, okay? That's what I was reading this book for. That's why it was part of the cult graphic. And then the book ended just so haphazardly. Like, I was really bored in the first quarter, and then the middle section of the book I was mildly invested, and then last quarter lost me again. So I'm gonna average this book out to a 2-star. I'm not gonna keep it. I wish the ending was stronger. I wish the beginning was stronger, and I wish that Olympia's present day following her daughter was interesting and somehow relevant. It's like her following her daughter leads her to another woman, and she spends time with this woman, and her daughter isn't really relevant to her life anymore. But then the book ends with her writing a letter to her daughter explaining the family. The way that the cult ended and the way the families disbanded, for the lack of a better term, could have been good had it been written better. We get references at the start of the book, you know. It's so sad that the carnival ended that way. And we find out how the carnival ends, and I thought there was no emotion behind it. Like, the carnival ended within 2 pages. There was not a lot of build-up in that chapter, and that could be a pacing issue. I'm sure other people thought that this book's pacing was amazing, but to me it just felt like we're focusing on all this crap over here. Meanwhile, we get 2 pages of the big conflict that ends the carnival. I spent a full month reading this book, and I'm so mad at myself for not DNFing it when I thought initially that I should. I tried to stick through it thinking maybe by the end it'll be worth it, and if the end hadn't been so shit, the middle would have been worth it. The middle section I would have given 3.5 stars, right? The beginning and the end, literally a half to a 1-star rating. So this book I'm going to average out at a 1.5. It's not staying in my life. I'm unhauling this ASAP. I actually am going to quickly do a little scan through of my shelves and see if there's any other books on my shelf that I want to unhaul, because I do have 5 days off work right now, thank the heavens. But yeah, this I don't know who I would recommend this to. I wouldn't call this horror. Some things were a little bit extreme, but I wouldn't call it a horror by any means. So I'm not sure who to recommend this to. I personally wouldn't recommend it. But if you want to give it a go, like, it is a really long book. For what it actually is, it is 400 pages of family drama, family tension, secrets, don't tell that person this is happening, and it wasn't my vibe. So I am done with the cult category. I'm ready to move on to books that I actually enjoy, or books that are quick enough that reading them doesn't drain my entire life force. I don't know what category we're going to go with next. Like, you guys are going to know before me, so we'll see. I have decided to read the witches category next, so let's go through some descriptors for the witches subgenre. So it firstly states that if it's surrounding historical witches, there is usually a sense of isolation where the witch has nowhere to escape persecution except the woods. Broomsticks as a mode of transport, animal companions / familiars. Obviously witchcraft is present, such as using herbs and various ingredients, and the witch usually possesses a spell book which has been passed down throughout several generations. There is usually an association with the number 3, and sometimes there is a mention of a deal with the devil for her powers. So for this subgenre, I decided to pick up Slewfoot. I am so excited that I picked this one up. I don't deal with historical fiction at all. I hate historical fiction. This is set in the 1600s, in like a Puritan town where our main character Abatha is just trying to fit in, just trying to live her best life, and just things keep happening to her, shitty situations. And I'm only 100 pages in, so 4 chapters. I don't know where this book is going to go. What I do know is I'm hoping, and I don't know if this counts as a spoiler because I haven't read it yet, but I'm hoping that Abatha makes a deal with the devil to become a witch and to come into her powers, because this woman has been screwed over so much in these 100 pages. It is ridiculous. So we do have the fact that it's historical, so Abatha does live on a farm on the outskirts of town, so she does live quite close to the woods. She has got a one-eyed cat. I don't know, it's just a cat right now. We have had mentions of a spellbook, we've had mentions of herbs and things that have been passed down throughout her family. And we also have the devil as a character in this, so I'm thinking she's going to make a deal with the devil. This is my hope. This is my goal for this book. But I'm actually surprisingly liking it. For a historical fiction set in the 1600s, I'm vibing so hard with this book. I cannot wait to get back into it. It also has illustrations. Like, if you're sick of being an adult and just having books with no pictures, like this book by Brom has pictures. That is Abatha. That's our main character. I think she's beautiful. I'm so happy to be reading this, to be honest with you. I was only going to read this one for the witches category. If I enjoy it enough, I might pick up another book from this category. But, I mean, it's so successful. After Greek Geek Love, I was scared. This is very promising. So I will keep you updated, hopefully. Lads, ladies, everything in between, I finished Slewfoot last night, and holy shit, I love this book. I gave this book 5 stars. A book set in 1666, I gave 5 stars. Blew my goddamn mind. I'm not gonna say any spoilers, but I definitely was right about the direction this book took. So we've discussed Abatha. She lives on a farm, kind of further out from the village with her husband, Edward. Basically, she lives isolated from everyone. The woods are really close to her. Like I said, she does have a cat, a one-eyed cat named Booker, who we love. Trigger warnings for animal deaths in this book. There wasn't really a lot about the spell book. Like, there was mentions of Abatha having a spell book in her family that she actually lost. But let's just do a quick summary. Basically, we have got Abatha. She is stuck in a Puritan village. She loves God, but she doesn't fear God. She's not like a Bible basher in the traditional sense. Like, she likes prayer and she likes God, but she doesn't want to have to go to church for 3 hours twice a week, and she wants to be able to speak her mind, and she's just in a town where that is not the vibe. And when Abatha's husband unfortunately passes away, she's left to run this farm by herself. She really struggles, and then this creature comes out of the woods, and they kind of strike up this friendship, and their relationship was beautiful. For the lack of a better term, we're going to call him Samson. Samson was, I had no issues with his character. I really, really like Samson as a character. I loved Abatha as a character. And I'm going to be so fucking for real. The last quarter of this book, it hit something deep in my soul. I would honestly recommend this. If you like movies like Midsommar, Pearl, Carrie, if you like horror movies where the main girl is constantly fucked over by the people in her life and eventually takes revenge out on everyone, this is the book for you. This is definitely good for her vibes. I cannot recommend this highly enough because I don't think anyone would dislike this book. Maybe it's a little bit slow sometimes, maybe it's a bit too historical, but if I can overlook those things, you can overlook those things. So this is a 5-star read for me. This is my favorite that I've read for this challenge so far. And I'm really scared we're not going to get another 5-star, but it is definitely a witchy book. It is, I mean, look at the cover and try and tell me this is not a witchy book. She's on a broomstick. So anyway, I don't know which category I'm going to go with next. Possibly supernatural, because the book I have for that is really short. But let's get into it. I am moving on to the supernatural subgenre. Now, supernatural is a tricky one because I think it is so all-encompassing. I think there are so many things that fall under supernatural, and in all honesty, I'm not sure why like demon possession is its own category and haunted houses is its own category, as well as supernatural. I think it's a weird thing, so I'm not entirely sure how to break down this trope for you guys. What I've found is that supernatural books, A, are usually set in the real world, B, the point of view is usually from just an ordinary normal person who is completely unaware that the supernatural exists, and 3, it is supernatural and not fantasy, because this is how it was described from what I saw. You've got dragons and ghosts. Both could be made up creatures. However, we put dragons into fantasy because we know that dragons never existed. But we put ghosts in supernatural because a lot of people do believe that ghosts exist. So apparently that's the distinction between supernatural and fantasy, but I don't know what the difference is between paranormal and supernatural. It's fine. The book I've chosen for this one, which I would have said earlier, is Nothing But Blackened Teeth. I'm gonna start this one tonight because it is so short. It is like under 100 pages. Oh, I was wrong. It's 120 pages, but I think it'll be a quick read. Even if I don't finish it tonight, I will definitely finish it tomorrow. So I'm going to get started on this one now, and I will keep you updated. And just like that, I finished Nothing But Blackened Teeth. It only took me like an hour and a half to read. It's a pretty quick book. So this follows a group of friends, 5 friends that basically rent out this mansion, supposedly haunted mansion, for a wedding, and they are drinking their first night there, having a good time, and shit just gets kind of crazy kind of quickly. Now, I'm gonna say straight out, I did not enjoy this book at all. Like, this book, for the amount of stuff that happens, it was way too short, but it was also boring and slow. I don't know how to explain this book. Look, I will say it's interesting. I would prefer to have known more about the supernatural things that are happening, because this book is set in Japan, so a lot of the language used to describe like demons and spirits is Japanese, so I had to constantly stop and Google it and try and figure out what was happening and what creatures are watching these people. But it was set in the real world. It did have the point of view of a normal person who, well, in this they all are aware of supernatural stuff, and they all kind of believe in it. So none of them seem super surprised when supernatural stuff starts to go crazy. But with this group of friends, there's 5 of them, and I feel like I would have been more interested in their history as a group. There was a lot of mentions of things that have happened in the past and who slept with who and who's dated who. I was more interested in their friendship dynamic than the ghostly, demony things that were happening towards the end. I think the ending was very rushed, and I think it just wasn't super well told, if I'm being honest. So I'm going to unhaul this book, and with that, that is the end of the supernatural category. I have got nothing else to say. Okay friends, today we are going to be discussing folk horror. If I sound sick, it is because I am. I don't know what happened, but I woke up at 5 o'clock with this situation, so obviously took today off of work. Still feel like trash. Folk horror. Folk horror is one of those categories that isn't really boxed in. It is quite up to interpretation, and I think folk horror is more of a vibe than a list of tropes. But here is what I found out about it anyway. I found out it is usually set in a rural area, specifically a small tight-knit town that is hiding some big secret that is deeply rooted in the past. This genre often deals with beliefs versus fears versus culture, but it is less about structured religion and more about ritualistic paganism. That is literally all I know. I know that it can also be confused with gothic horror, but that means nothing to me yet. Keeping all that in mind, the book I am reading for this category is Pine by Francine Toon. This book so far, I have started it. I am 94 pages in, so I'm about a third of the way through. And it is very, very slow. This book follows a 10-year-old girl named Lauren who lives with her father Niall alone. And they live in a small town, small tight-knit town. Everyone knows each other. Everyone has opinions on each other. On Halloween night, Lauren and Niall are driving back to their house when they see a woman cold, kind of just looking down on her luck. They pick her up, they take her back to their house. The dad tries to help her out, but come morning, the woman is gone, and Lauren questions the dad saying, "Where did the woman go?" And Niall says, "What woman?" He genuinely does not remember there being a woman in their house. From there, we're learning a little bit more about Niall's past with Lauren's mum, how their relationship started, how the town viewed her, some of the bad juju that's associated with their house. And we're seeing Lauren kind of understanding that she and her dad are outcasts in this village. Like, a lot of people don't really like her dad, and obviously those beliefs are passed down to their children, so not many of the kids at school like her except for her single best friend named Billy. But apart from that, nothing's happened, right? Now, I obviously just went into this blind, but I did read the back of the book, and apparently this book is about a local teenager going missing. We're a third of the way through, and this local teenager has not gone missing yet. So either the next 2/3 of this book are going to go really, really fast, or this plot is irrelevant to what's actually happening in the story. So I'm not sure. I'm enjoying it regardless. Like, it's fine. I kind of feel bad for Niall. You can tell that he's definitely struggling with his mental health, and I think maybe mental health could play a part in folk horror. From what I remember of The Ritual, which I think is the only folk horror I've ever consumed, it is very much about, is this actually happening? Are they actually seeing that? And I think Niall's mental health and alcoholism is definitely going to tie into what could potentially actually be happening in his house. But who's to know? I will try and read a little bit more of it today, but to be honest, all I want to do is lie here in bed and watch America's Next Top Model. So we'll have to see if I read any more tonight. If I do, I will update you guys as we go, maybe. But yeah, I think this is the 6th category for us, so we're almost halfway there. Okay, my friends, I finished reading Pine by Francine Toon. This book, I don't know specifically what makes it a folk horror. So let's just quickly run down through everything. It is set in a small town, like I mentioned earlier, and we do end up finding out that a teenager has gone missing in this town. Now, this teenager going missing does bring up a lot of things from the past when our main character's mother went missing 10 years ago. So it does have that element of the past is affecting the present, what's going on, yada yada, but it wasn't really folksy. There was a lot of talk about crystals and circles of 12 stones because the mother was quite spiritual and superstitious, but it didn't really encapsulate the whole vibe of the book. And I'm going to be honest, not a lot happens in this book for what it is. Not a lot happens. I don't know what I would rate this. I'm probably leaning at like 2.5 stars, maybe 2 stars. So I'm definitely going to unhaul this one. It's not something special. It didn't really do anything different. I predicted who like the villain of this book was before there was even a crime committed. There was a couple of quotes in this book where I did think it actually did match some of the prompts from earlier. So this one says, other women crop their hair, sometimes leaving it long at the back and short at the sides. In lots of small ways, the town had never truly left the 90s. It does have that stuck in the past, old-timey kind of vibe. And there was one more. Oh, okay. And this is when Niall, our main character's father, talks about his wife. Before she moved to Strathorn, Christine had found paganism in the city, becoming one of the performers at the Beltane Fire Festival. He had never been to the spring event itself, but he knew it was about body paint and nudity and sex. He had heard that there were orgies. She had danced naked with fire. So there is like hints at what could potentially be folk horror. It just didn't hit in this book. So this one is getting on hold. I would call this a bit of a flop. But I'm pretty sure the next category I'm going to be reading from is gothic horror, which could be really fun. I'm also planning on reorganizing my entire bookshelves today, so that's going to be scary. Pray for me.